Chris Evans tried to escape being a hero and Hollywood wouldn't let him. In today's video, I want to talk about the fact that Chris Evans is coming back to the MCU as Captain America in Avengers Doomsday, as well as some projects moving forward. And the first point I kind of want to make is how good is the enemy of great, and Chris Evans shows that in his career better than almost anybody. It's the proper MCU curse. It's not just him. You look at a Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth, clearly it's a curse of the Chris's, where they are great within their roles. They embody the role in a giant franchise like the MCU greatly. And I'm using the word great deliberately because he truly is great as Captain America, the same way that Chris Pratt was great as Star-Lord and Chris Hemsworth was great as Thor. And the trouble is when you're great in a role, it's very difficult to break out of that role. I mean, this is an issue that has cursed a lot of actors for a very long time, most famously with sitcoms. Look at the actors of Friends or Big Bang Theory, or How I Met Your Mother, any of these comedies. It's very difficult to break out of being in a very iconic role. That being said, it's not impossible, and the MCU is also another example of how it isn't impossible. Robert Downey Jr. won an Oscar in Oppenheimer after being in the Avengers movies, after being Iron Man for so many years. The point isn't that it's impossible, it's that you have to be great, and the movie you have to be in has to also be great. And that's a very difficult and rare thing to do, because when you're in such an iconic movie where you have so many eyes on you and you have such a legacy for it, breaking out of that role is going to be extremely difficult. And that goes on to my second point, what I want to make, which is about Chris Evans' range. He displays tremendous range, and he displays that fundamentally he is a very good actor. Good, not great. Now, what do I mean by this, right? Let's look at some of the movies he's done. So look at like Knives Out, for example. He is great in that movie. The movie is good. I actually really like the Knives Out movies, and I think that they're a great franchise and they're a lot of fun to watch. But that being said, Knives Out, Oppenheimer, not really the same level, despite how good he is. But it's not just Knives Out. You look at movies like Honey Don't or Materialist, where I think Chris Evans is good in it, and he displays very different characters in both movies, one being a bit more of a silly comedy, you could say, and another being more of a rom-com, but he plays both sides perfectly. You look at Gifted, you look at Snowpiercer, a more family, paternalistic, hopeful, like showing a different type of range to Snowpiercer, a dark thriller type movie. Side note on Snowpiercer, I think it's one of the most underrated movies of the 2010s. My point is, throughout all these movies, Chris Evans has always done a good job, and he's displayed a lot of range. There's other movies too, Great Man, right? Where he's good in all of them, but the movies are also just good. And because they're not great, it's really hard for him to ever break out of the shell, which is Captain America. It's an unfortunate position to be in because he made it vocal, he made it clear that after the kind of Infinity Saga came to an end, that he did want to move on from being Captain America. He did want to stretch his legs as kind of proving himself as an excellent actor. I think it's a real shame that none of those movies kind of hit on that deep level. I mean, they all have their own niche fan bases. But yeah, I mean, he was Captain America, right? And that's going to be really, really hard to break out of. Which takes me on to my next point. And my next point is the MCU big actor who's not hit a big movie since they've left. And that's a really weird way of phrasing it. But it's this weird toxic relationship, right? Where the MCU was in this relationship with Chris Evans, where at a time when they got together, Chris Evans, where he came off making the Fantastic Four movies, which at the time was seen as very cheesy, very corny, and he wasn't looked upon in the best light. Following that, he gets cast as Captain America, and it was kind of a career reviver. It set him up for 10 years, obviously financially and worldwide fame, that goes without saying, but it set his legacy up, right? In that 10-year stretch where he's consistently basically in a movie every year, from the first Captain America to Endgame. It's probably more than 10 years, I don't know how many years it was. And then he leaves, right? And in the time he leaves, he really clearly wants to break out of that shell, and he does a wide range of projects, and I think a lot of his projects were great. A lot of other people didn't think that way or didn't feel that way, but he's clearly trying to break out of the role. In that same time, Marvel and the MCU is trying to move on without him, right? It's also Robert Downey Jr. too, but they're trying to move on without him. We're trying to get to that next step. But none of these things are hitting. They're trying to fill that void that Captain America and his performance as Steve Rogers like left that atmosphere, right? And they made the series with Bucky. They made the movie. It's not filling that void though, right? Like he worked because he's great. He's really, really good at Captain America. And because that void's not filled, they need him too, right? And it was already announced and it was already known that RDJ is coming back, but he's not coming back as Tony Stark, he's coming back as Doctor Doom. This has been known for a while, and this has obviously brought a wave of excitement, right? But the trouble is, as much as, you know, fan service I generally think is a bad thing, because what are you going to keep on doing, right? Like, then death means nothing in a character, a goodbye means nothing in a series. Marvel needed this, but they needed another catalyst. They needed something to get the people excited, not just about this one-off event, but it moving forward. And they kind of needed Chris Evans more than he needed them, I feel. Like, his legacy was set to me. We remembered as one of the most iconic roles in the history of movies as Captain America and Steve Rogers for the impact it left in the last, you know, the 15 years Marvel run. And that would have been it, and that's a good legacy to have. But, you know, he's still in his prime. He still clearly wants to do more, and it's this weird situation where he's going back to them, but really they really needed him, because it's kind of in a dire place right now without having that external boost of Steve Rogers, Captain America is back, right? It's different than saying, oh, RDJ is back, but he's not Iron Man. It's just different, right? Like the feeling, everybody knows it's going to happen, but the feeling of seeing him on the screen, it's going to hit hard. It's undeniable. But it did make me think more broadly about what does it mean to break out of being in an iconic role and how difficult it is, right? Christian Bale is a really good example of this. Like, he was Batman. He's clearly, I don't think people remember him exclusively for Batman, but ultimately, like, Batman is going to be the thing on his legacy, what people will most remember him for. And you look at what's happening right now with Tom Holland and the opportunity he has to really break out of Spider-Man within the Odyssey, and it's like a really interesting thing, right? Like, will he have a more RDJ like approach where his acting is so excellent, his performance is so excellent that you will just remember him as an all-time great? Or will it be more of a Chris Evans situation where you remember him, he's a good actor, but man, was he a great Spider-Man? So that's the kind of point I wanted to make in this video about more generally the philosophy of good being the enemy of great, but specifically in regards to Chris Evans. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please subscribe. I try to make a few of these videos a week. Thank you for watching.